before we, oh, there we go. Okay, now we're really going. So I'm going to spend a little time chatting, and then I want to ask some questions too. But before we get started with all of that, I would like to do a land acknowledgement. And we need to acknowledge the land that we're living on. While this is a virtual event, Grandmothers for Reproductive Rights is headquartered in Maine. And this is land that's stolen from the Wabanaki people. And Wabanaki people continue to live here. Land acknowledgements are a simple way to resist the erasure of Indigenous histories and work towards honoring the truth. Recognizing the history of land sovereignty is particularly important to our work with reproductive rights, which are the legal and societal limitations imposed on folks who can have babies. Wabanaki people underwent genocide, including the forced removal of children to state care, white homes, and residential schools. And colonization and white supremacy are embedded in the foundation of our country, and we can't root it out without naming its continued presence. As you can see in the chat, Kate has dropped in a link to help you learn a little bit more about land acknowledgements and why we do those, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about that. All right. Our agenda for the day is pretty straightforward. We want this to be an informal conversation. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information about my background and what brought me to GER, and then talk a little bit about where we are going this year and some of what we're facing. And we'll leave plenty of time for questions and comments at the end. And I love to hear from all of you. So first off, who am I? I was born in San Diego, and I've been living in Maine for about 10 years now. So I'm about as far West Coast Southern as you can get to as far East Coast Northern as you can get now. I've been working in nonprofits for about 20 years in different capacities. Some very large nonprofits like the American Red Cross and Girl Scouts, and then smaller ones like GER. For the past 8 years, I was the executive director of Hardy Girls Healthy Women, which is another Maine-based organization. And that is getting young people, girls and gender expansive folks involved in social activism. So a lot of overlap that you can see there. A big part of that work was looking at gender justice and also intergenerational support. So working as adults with young people and connecting them to other people in their communities to forge a future based on knowledge and relationships from the past. Personally, I am married and live in Rockland. I have 3 young kids. They are 11, 8, and 4, almost 5. I'm sad that my 5-year-old will be celebrating his birthday by getting a vaccine in his arm, but that is the times that we are living in. Happy birthday, 5-year-old. And so I've really enjoyed living in Maine, which seems a little silly to say when I look out my window right now and see all the snow that is on there. I definitely did not shovel growing up in San Diego, but it's a beautiful place to be. What brought me to GER is obviously the mission is very important to me. It's something that I have been aware of and active in for as long as I have been aware of menstruation and pregnancy, so almost my whole life. But GER is special, and I've been aware of it for the past probably 5 to 6 years, kind of following GER and what's going on. And whenever I would go to protests, I would always see the wonderful volunteers in the yellow shirts and just be really excited about what was going on with them. And one of the things that I really loved about GER from afar is that you're all spunky. I mean, it's not a boring group of activists. And I think that sometimes people can think that of activists, especially feminist, where they think that it's a group of people who are bra burning with no sense of humor, and they all hate men and down with everything. And they forget that there's a lot of humor and wit and camaraderie and community that's involved in activism. And that's what I always saw with all of the GER people that were out in the community. And that intergenerational work, again, that I've worked on in the past is really important to me to continue forward with. And the biggest part is after meeting the board and the staff, many of whom are on this call today, I thought those are people that I really want to work with, because of the care and the trust and the respect that they have for each other. It makes all the mission work even that more important. But as you know, even if you're really committed to something, if you're working with people that are fighting or any of that stuff, it makes it a lot less enjoyable. So when we're in this fight that is so serious and so important and so pivotal right now, it means the world to me to have coworkers that we can have honest conversations with and we can laugh with, and board members that are out in the community and showing trust and of that. So the mission, yes, is a huge part of it, but it's also the people, which is why I'm excited to be here today to expand the even more people involved with GER that I get to know of, which is each of you. So on that note, it's a big year for GER, both internally and externally, as you all know what's happening in the world. And we've had some really wonderful conversations about where we're going and what we want to do in this year. And beyond, obviously. And so one of the most important things is making sure that everyone who wants to be involved in GER, whether you are a homebound person, whether you're in a group, whether you're alone in a rural place in Iowa, or whether you are living in a huge city and you've got a group of people that you're already involved with, we want there to be ways for each person to be involved and across the country, and building that community together so that everyone feels that sense of where we're going and that we are working on this together. We were talking as a staff about how easy it is in this work to sort of fall into despair when we think about what's going on nationally. And while, yes, it is very serious and something, a lot of work to be done, there's also that community that we have that we need to stick together and fall back on, which is, again, one of the things that I loved about GER. I'd like to share an image with you, if I can do that. Or if Kate, can I do that? Okay, share screen.
I just made you the host, so it should work.
Okay. I'm not sure what it's showing you. It's showing you my whole screen or just the one part. You all see?
It's showing a Canva tab.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me enlarge this. How long have we been on Zoom and yet we still have these things? Like, no.
I think you want to press present in the top right there.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we've been talking about as far as getting everyone involved is that we really have these programmatic tracks that we've been working on, and it can, Kate, who started off our call as our grassroots organizer, and also Elaine and Lucy are the two other staff folks on here. We've been having a lot of conversations about this and what this looks like. And so we really view GER as a hub, to use Kate's word. How are we having people come in and then also showing them out what else is happening in the world, because we're not operating in a vacuum here. And we're also not trying to recreate wheels. A huge part of what it is about bringing older women together, older people together, is that you have a whole life history. You have a knowledge of what happened before Roe. And we want to bring up some of those things again so that we can point out that history and that knowledge in our current programming. And so we're going to talk a little bit about each of these tracks, and Kate is going to again put links in the chat when they're relevant. So for instance, we're looking at federal policy change. We are part of several different national coalitions. And so we pay attention to the messaging that's coming out and the actions that they're asking for. And then we give those out to you as a GER community. One of the huge ones right now is WHPA, or WHPA, the Women's Health Protection Act. which we still need folks to be voting on. So one of the links in the chat will show you how to reach out to your elected officials and voice your support of this really important policy that actually goes beyond Roe in some ways of with reproductive health care and rights. So that's one example of current federal policy that we're looking at. We want to make sure that we stay informed so that we can get all that out to you. Another campaign that's happening right now is a Roe campaign, or Reproductive Options Exist. And that's where folks can research and expose those anti-abortion centers in your community. We just had a really wonderful coffee and chat last week, the week before, where we worked with folks from Repro Action, and they were talking about some of the techniques that the clinics, also known as crisis pregnancy clinics, use to kind of lure folks in who are really looking for an abortion, and their whole goal is to convince them otherwise, and share sometimes some not so accurate information to convince them otherwise. So that's one specific campaign, but it's kind of focusing around GER members as truth tellers and kind of rooting out that truth in the community and making sure that people have the information that they need to make their decisions. Because I just mentioned coffee and chat, we can talk about the education offerings. And I know I'm sailing through all of this because I really just want to talk to all of you and answer questions and things. So I know I'm a fast talker. But on the education initiatives, those are things like coffee and chats. Those are including things in our newsletter to learn more. Just making sure that you feel like you have all the information that you want and need to talk to folks in the community, not just about GER, but also about reproductive rights, health, justice. And we're always looking to expand those. For instance, we're looking at a community care series where we can kind of equip folks to be the grandmothers in the community that maybe some folks don't have. And as people are looking for, once abortion rights are more restricted, how can they find access to actual care? Whether that's looking into abortion funds for transportation, getting out of the state when necessary, abortion pills, all of that information. It's a lot to keep track of. And so we want to empower all of you to feel like you can be community grandmothers in that community care series. Storytelling is a huge part of abortion work in general, but one of the ways that I think GERs are really unique, again, is that you have those decades that you've lived past your abortion experience. So we've all read in New York Times and a lot of places people's abortion stories, which is so important to normalize abortions and make sure that people know that those stereotypes that are out there about who's having abortions and what necessitates abortions, it's really broader than that, and it's across the board. And so, but with GER storytelling, not only is that there's that action of what has taken place, but you have the hindsight of looking back and saying, because of this choice in my life, here's what has been made possible for me. Here's where I've gone beyond this. Here's how this impacted a family if I decided to have one, or here's how this has changed my career trajectory or just personal well-being. So that's what we're really looking at in our storytelling is the wisdom of GERs who have lived this. And then also, if you've already got a group that's happening, we have an expert, a community organizer on staff, and she is happy to help you with organizing assistance, whether you need templates, whether you need letters to the editor templates or tailored workshops to how to get inroads with the people in your community, how to reach out to Planned Parenthood, how to support other things that are going on. Kate is ready to assist in any way that's necessary. So again, I hope that all of these different kind of tracks show that if you have 5 minutes in your day, here's a link to call your elected officials to talk about WIPA. And if you have a ton of time and this is your passion project right now with a group of folks, connect with Kate and she can help you with organizing. If you have maybe an hour or two a week and you want to do something from home, you can be researching Roe campaign and the anti-abortion clinics. If there's a story that you've never told before in your life, we want your voice and you can participate in storytelling. So there's different aspects for how this connects to you personally and how you want to be involved. And we just want to make sure again that there's those tracks for people to access. It's going to be a tough year. I don't think that there's a whole lot of doubt of how the case is going to end up in June, whether that's overturning Roe completely or just really inhibiting that and taking away a lot of its power. But a lot of you all, I'm 41, so I can't say we have been there before because Roe has been around my whole life. But I don't think we ever took it for granted. We knew that this was always a battle that was going to be fought, and we're here to support you and to support the other folks who are in this field. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time now. We can exit this. And just spend time face to face with each other. If my screen would go away. Face to face with each other to answer any questions. I want to make sure that you are familiar with all of the other staff that are here at GER. And yeah, get to know each other a little bit, because I'm sure me talking for longer and longer is not exactly getting to know me and you all. So yeah, let me check out or Kate, do you know if there's any questions that have come up?
Yeah, we have several questions. I think maybe it makes sense to start with someone had asked if the staff could be introduced, or maybe we can do a round of introductions for the leadership team. And
that would be great.
Go on to the next questions. So probably a lot of y'all I already know, but I see some folks I'm not super familiar with. I'm Kate Vaughn. I use she and her pronouns, and I have been the national grassroots organizer with GER since November 2020. But I began working with GER in early 2017 when I worked at an abortion care provider and family planning provider here in Maine. So been working with GERS for quite a while and really fortunate to do that. And my role is really about, as Kelly said, like I follow up on folks who reach out to us. I try to get folks engaged with us and figure out what tools, what support, and sort of scaffolding do people want in order to take action on sexual and reproductive health rights and justice issues. And some of that means sitting at tables with coalitions who are working on federal issues. And a lot of it looks like working with people on state and local levels. Yeah, and maybe I'll pass it from me to Lucy because your square is right next to mine.
Hi, everybody. Yes, Lucy Hull. And I came to a very early GER meeting when Judy Carl, our founder, started it in 2013. And then I was at that point working full time. And so I really couldn't jump in full both feet until after the 2016 election, after I had retired from my other job. And so I've been very, very happy to be involved with GER and helping to think through some of these things and consult on the fundraising piece. Good to see you all here.
Great. And
Kathy?
Elaine.
Oh, Elaine, and then we'll do Kathy.
Oh, good.
Let me unmute. I'm Elaine Richard. I use she and her pronouns. And I've been with GER for about 5 years, though I've been fighting this fight since the late 70s when I was, I'd say, privileged to be allowed to work at an abortion clinic down in Louisiana. And as a volunteer for GER, I am, as Kelly mentioned, heading up our new Roe campaign, or Reproductive Options Exist, which we're hoping to expose and bring truth to those crisis pregnancy resource, anti-abortion, fake clinic, anything you want to call them, places, so that people know the truth, because we believe that grandmothers are truth tellers. And that's the role we want to do. There are some of you that I see on here that are on that committee. So I appreciate everyone's work with that. It's a really good group. We have people from Arizona, from Kansas, from Maine, and hopefully all the other states that we're working with will join in on that. I also am excited that we go into classrooms, mostly colleges and stuff, to talk about our experiences and tell our stories and how that's impacted our lives and everyone else's life forever. So I hope all of you who are on here will find some way that GER can help you be involved in this movement, because I think we have something for everyone who would like to be involved. And the more we work together, the better off we're going to be. So thanks for coming. And Kathy, I think you're the next one.
I'm next. Hi, I'm Kathy Tome. I think I know a lot of people here. I'm the administrator. I'm behind the scenes. I do all that kind of stuff, the taxes, pay the bills, organize events. But yeah, I'm part of the kitchen cabinet, and it's a great group of women doing some great stuff, and I'm just happy to support them in any way I can. And so, like I said, I'm the administrator behind the scenes trying to push all the paper. Anyways, thank you. And I'm just excited to have Kelly on board with us. It's just a great addition to our team. So
Thanks, Kathy. And Lucy mentioned Judy, as I'm sure a lot of you know Judy Carl. I know that you are on here, Judy, if you wanted to just say hello as the board chair and founder.
Well, I'm excited to see so many people here today and to greet Kelly, who has been with us just under a month. One more day and it'll be
Yes.
Kelly. With a group of women, and from then on, it's me, the founder. I just happen to have hung around for a long time, but it's an exciting place to be. And what I love seeing is each time somebody new comes in, there's a new idea that comes forward, or a slightly different way of doing something. So the creativity in this group is wonderful to be part of. And I appreciate you all coming, and hope that you'll find even just a little way, writing one postcard to a legislator can make a difference, or that kind of thing. So thank you very much. And I'll hand it back to Kate and Kelly.
Wonderful. Thanks, Judy.
I can lift up more questions from the chat. Would that be helpful?
That's great. Yeah.
So we have Pam from Midcoast Women, who says that she's known about GER for quite some time, but would be interested in knowing about how it is organized, funded, what our geographical reach is, and then staff beyond the ED, which we just covered. So Kelly, if there's any part of that you want me to handle, just let me know.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. But again, I've been here for one day less than a month. So we only became a nonprofit a couple years ago, even though we've been around since 2013. So it was a largely volunteer effort for many years. And then increasingly, it became obvious that this was becoming a bigger movement and more people wanted to be involved. And so GER hired some contractors to, like Kate and other folks, to start doing some of that work that needed to be going on every day. That some of the volunteers were like, I'm retired. I don't want a full-time job, but I still want to be engaged. And so it slowly started building in to have some more infrastructure in there. And then I am the first executive director. And so now we're kind of looking at staff members and that infrastructure behind the scenes. And we're gaining in donations from more individuals from around the state. We always appreciate anything that folks can give, both in time and money. And we're also going to be applying for some grants in the coming year, but this will be our first year. Although we got our 501c3 status in 2020, I believe. This will be our first year kind of operating fully under that with staff members and looking at grants and things. So we're excited for that. Did I cover the parts of that question, I think?
Well, just to add the part about geographical reach,
Yes.
we are responsive to folks everywhere in the United States who reach out to us. Currently, I'm working with leaders in, let me see off the top of my head. So we have a very robust chapter here in Maine. I put in the chat a link for our chapter meeting next week. So those of you who are in Maine, we're meeting on 2/9 and you are invited. Working with folks in Arizona, Kansas, and North Carolina, and new relationships since the fall winter last year into now growing in Florida, Washington, Oregon. And we also are connected with folks in Ohio. So we're kind of spread out in a few places, and also Pennsylvania, right? I should say that. So we're really, again, with those sort of tracks that Kelly talked about, we're trying to make it so that if it's one individual, they're able to reach out to us and get involved in something. But also if there are folks who are like, I have a group of folks who want to build something that doesn't already exist, we support with that. We're working with folks in New York too. But also if there are multi-issue groups, like so many, particularly so many women 50 and up help form these groups after the 2016 presidential election that are multi-issue grassroots groups. And we also are connecting with those sort of groups that already exist who want to take action on this particular type of work. So our reach is kind of all over the place and growing pretty rapidly since the rallies last October.
And I see another question from Vara. Has GER given up on Roe being overturned, or if not, what disruptive actions are being planned before June 1st? We definitely have not given up. I think that there's some inevitability to what might be happening, with the court being 6-3, regardless of a new appointment, which would happen after June anyway. But disruptive actions are happening all the time, whether that's calling on behalf of other policies that would reinforce Roe, calling elected officials on that specifically. And also, again, I know it sounds like giving up, but putting, again, that infrastructure in place behind, if and when something like this happens, then we have a whole community system that's right there to make sure that abortion access is available to folks as safe as can be. And so I don't consider it giving up, but there is some reality with the Supreme Court in the position that they're in. And how can we make sure that even with that decision, we have plans in place and we're supporting systems that are already there and making sure that more people know about the systems that are already there.
Yeah.
You might.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I guess I would say like GER's whole thing is not giving up. I think if GERs were quitters, we wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, like trying to strike a balance of we're in these coalitions that are more than 100 organizations all across the country. We're all strategizing together around how are we going to rebuild really legal access to abortion. But also, and those folks, I think there will be an escalation of action as we get closer to this decision from the Supreme Court being handed down. But we're doing that in concert with other groups because we are more powerful together and because we want to be in step with our partners who have a lot of knowledge to offer us. And like Kelly highlighted, we're also trying to think about the role of older women that can be so crucial in our communities for people who are going to need to seek that care, whether that's legally in another state than the one they live in, and how are they going to know how to access those resources and get there, or whether it's self-managing abortions, which has been happening for a long time, forever really, but is going to continue to increase. How can we basically arm GERs with the information and knowledge of referrals for vetted places to get accurate information to be able to help people who are in those circumstances. So we're trying to leverage both. And so that's kind of where we're at. I think all of us in this movement, we're preparing for worst case scenarios while also refusing to give up and knowing that this is the chickens kind of coming home to roost of the anti-movement. This has been their long game. They've played the long game, and they've played it ruthlessly. And so we have to play the long game too. So this might be a very dark time. And lots of folks have been in that darkness before. But we're not giving up on a legal right to abortion. I think we're also thinking about all the other ways that we can support this being a safe reality for people, with or without really the permission of the Supreme Court, if we're being honest.
Pam asked about what are some of the groups that we are part of and coalitions. Abortion Care Network is a big one. Sister Song is another one they're really originated reproductive justice in that framework and terminology. And so we're constantly learning from there. Kate's going to put some links in the chat, sorry. So those are some big ones. All Above All is another one that's focusing on ending the Hyde Amendment. Let's see, Act for Abortion Access Coalition is also working on the the WIPA and Liberate Abortion campaign is another one that we are on. So we're always looking for new partnerships and new ways to connect with the work that's already happening in the world and to connect GERS to that work as well. Susan asked, where does the state of Maine stand if Roe falls? Our current governor has said that abortion will remain safe in Maine. We do have a governor's election coming up that could change those tides. We don't have a constitutional amendment in Maine yet, but that's something that we're also exploring with partners. And Kate's had many conversations about if there's energy around that. So again, if you want to speak more, Kate, on Maine specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important that we don't feel a false sense of safety or security about even states like Maine that have pretty good laws. No state in the US really has the kind of protection we really need, I would say. And even if we have really good laws in some states, those states will be overwhelmed by people who are forced to travel for care, and the infrastructure is not there. The sort of vigilantism of the anti-movement right now is really ramping up, and we see that also in terms of like how white supremacy is showing up in the anti-movement, right? We're seeing a lot of that. And so I think there's potential for upsets everywhere. And so even those of us who are we're okay right now in Maine. I think we have to be, this moment really calls us to be in solidarity with folks all across the country. And while we do have to build up protections on the state level, we're seeing intensive attacks on the state level. And so, for example, we're working with some folks in Kansas, and I know at least Pam is here from Kansas. Hi Pam, there is a campaign, there is an amendment up for a question in the ballot to change the Kansas state constitution to basically explicitly say that Kansans have no right to abortion. And so we're working with their statewide coalition of organizations to defeat that amendment. If the antis win that, we lose a state like Kansas that is really important in the abortion landscape regionally, right? And so that's just to say that like it's a really good time, even if you're in a state that has great laws, to reach out to abortion funds, providers, and sort of action groups about what are we doing to prepare for abortion migration into purple and blue states. What are we doing to get this right put into our state constitution so that it's not up for discussion anymore. So that's just, I don't want any of us to feel like anybody's safe. Like we're all going to be affected by this. And that means we all have a role to play in what comes next that can be a positive role, even if things are really hard. And Pam, since you're here, I don't know if there's anything you want to like kind of say about Kansas or the effort going on there. Not to put you on the spot, but.
Oh, well, we're, Kate and I go to the steering committee meetings and they're very positive, aren't they? They're like, yeah, we're gonna win this and that's good. GER's right in there. Yeah, we're working on it.
I mean, there's a path to victory, even though it feels very difficult. I guess like that's what I'm getting the sense of from those meetings. Yeah. And you know, I see Norma in the chat saying, you know, laws can change depending on who's in charge. So there is a piece of this work that is about elections. GER is a 501c3, so we cannot endorse candidates, but we can educate folks about the issues. We can encourage folks and share information about how people can get registered to vote, where they vote, et cetera. What are sources of, you know, vetted sources of information about candidates. How much of that election work we do really depends on what is interesting to people where they are, right? So I saw there were questions about what work we'll be doing in Maine around Get Out the Vote. And that really depends on the Maine chapter deciding what we do. And then we support them in that. So, yeah.
Norma, Dan here. I would just make the observation when you were saying about the opposition, talking about the opposition a minute ago, I think it's important that we see evidence that some of the violent stuff that they've been associated with in the past may have resurfaced. We know that a clinic has just been, an arson attack has just occurred in Tennessee, in East Tennessee and Knoxville. So the Planned Parenthood affiliate in Tennessee is facing a rebuild because of that, it's the opposition. It's important to follow the opposition at this point, not just because we want to counter what they do, but because we do still have a role in defending and protecting.
Absolutely, and pointing out the consequences of when those things are, you know, successful. You know, even in Texas already, we see statistics of what's happened with rising, you know, fatality rates with women, more visits to the emergency room when people are in desperate situations. And so recognizing not only their tactics, the anti's tactics, but also the results when there is, you know, something like SB 8, you know, that was passed in Texas, and calling that out as well, of saying this is not the results that anyone is looking for. But agreed. Connie asked if we can describe the process in Maine for getting a constitutional amendment. I'm gonna give that to Kate again.
Yeah, so there actually is a bill in the Maine legislature right now, sponsored by Senator Kathy Breen. The question is whether there's actually the will to kind of take that up. We don't feel that we have the votes. So what every state has a different constitutional amendment process. What Maine looks like is the legislature has to pass it with a 2/3 majority in both houses, both the House and the Senate, and then it goes to a ballot question and is voted on by the citizens of the state. So right now it looks like there aren't the votes for us to win that in this moment. And so constitutional amendment campaigns, Vermont's been doing one and they've been involved in that process for several years. They're really expensive. They're really long-term. There's something I think we need more and more of for sure, but it is not easy to win them necessarily. And like I said, every state has a different process, but that's what Maine's looks like, is a 2/3 vote, passage in the legislature, and then a vote at the ballot box. And yes, we work with the Maine Women's Lobby. So I wanted someone had asked a question about states having protective laws in their constitutions. Vermont would be the first if they actually pass. If they actually win this effort, they would be the first state to actually pass a constitutional amendment protecting the right to abortion on the state level. There are 4 states that have passed constitutional amendments that are anti-abortion. So I'm going to put actually in the chat right now just a rundown from the Guttmacher Institute about what the landscape would look like if Roe were to fall. That's just good for us to have.
And I'm looking through the chat. I think that we covered all the questions, but if we haven't, if you want to post again or just unmute yourselves or raise your hand and ask that, there's going to be a lot of coalition needed this year and every year. Like Kate said, we're not going to win this in a silo. And so looking across multi-issue activism, looking at reproductive justice, which is much more expansive than specifically reproductive rights, and making sure that we are representing more than just one view of reproductive rights in the community, and that we're reaching out to a lot of different folks. Okay, I went back again. I don't see any more questions in there. Were there other things that people were curious about or comments from anyone?
Well, I'd love to make a comment that one of the things that we've really working intergenerational. We're not going to be around, and we need younger people to take up the torch because this is not going to stop. And for church allows women to be priests and priests to marry. We'll probably be fighting this battle. We've been in it. It's what I hope this particular organization can do is kind of be like the pepper in the sauce, because Kelly is perspective and bring that to the present. So that's why we collaborate, because many of the groups that we collaborate with are sort of the next generation down from us who haven't lived through what we've lived through. And I also I want to salute Pam Richardson. She's a celebrity now in Kansas because a wonderful article appeared in the Kansas City Star about her experience pre-Roe. Pam, do you want to say a little something about that?
I have Pam, that story framed right there on the wall.
Yeah.
Picture of
Hey.
70s. Yeah.
This is me. This was a 5 pages in the Sunday paper. I worked with this reporter for months, and they do have other things. I mean, they had to interview the other side, and but they made a point that this is not what you want to go back to. And I'm thrilled. I feel like part of my work here on Earth is finished.
Pam, you're my hero. I read that and I felt so moved. I was like, I have to frame this right away. You're up on the wall with a lot of other heroes of mine.
I'm
But I guess I feel like what you did there, Pam, reminded me how powerful and moving it is for me. I'm in my mid-30s to learn from the experiences of women decades older than me who have been doing this work a long time. And like Judy said, that is a big part of what we're trying to do this year in GER, is really work across generation and partner with folks who need abortions and birth control and all of that stuff right now, and bring in these and really deepen the relationships in this movement so we have deeper trust. And part of that is that we are trying to we have to learn new things, and we want to share what GERs know with younger people too, right? We really need both. And I think there's a real move right now to being particularly bold about and unapologetic about abortion, and sort of insatiable in our demands, that we refuse to apologize, you know, for what we need to live lives that we get to decide what those look like, to build our own futures. And so I'm really grateful to you, Pam, because it was seeing in a newspaper just a quote and a picture of you. It says, "I've never regretted it." And I just think about what that means for young people in your state to see that and be like, wow, like there are women who have lived through what I'm living through right now, and they're okay, right? And they know that this was what they needed to do. And someone is reminding me, we should say, you do not have to be a technical grandmother to be a part of GER. That's really important. We think of grandmother in a very broad sense. It's really about, do you care about present and future generations getting what they need, and having their rights, and all that's what really bonds us all together. I can link to the article, Carrie, but unfortunately there's a paywall. But yeah, I can put it in there. We should find a way to scan it and share it around. So maybe we'll work on that.
And it looks like Sue, do you want to join in?
I did. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Am I unmuted? Okay.
You're great.
Okay. I'm here for a variety of reasons. I'm the vice chair of Safe Maine, and we are an organization in Maine. We're a 501c3 as well. I'm a member of GER, but I'm also the vice chair of Safe. We help fund abortions for Mainers that can't afford them. So we work with the 3 major clinics in Maine, the Mabel Wadsworth Clinic in Bangor, and Maine Family and Planned Parenthood in Portland. We also work with out-of-state providers when they are needed. Women have to go out of state if they need a procedure past 18 weeks. So be aware of that. There's a time limit as to what's available in Maine. So we help pay for abortions. We give grants to the providers and they allocate them according to financial need. We've also been providing gift cards and gas cards. We've learned, as somebody mentioned earlier, that there's a lot of constraining circumstances financially for people beyond just paying for the procedure itself. So we hope that we are allied with you. And again, we need to be careful about lobbying because we're a 501c3. But we are definitely part of the mix here, and you can learn more about us on safemaine.org. So thanks. And thank you for this lovely opportunity to meet others.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. And Kate put a link to Safe Maine in the chat as well. So folks can go there and learn more. We want to be a connector. We want everyone getting involved.
That's great.
And abortion funds.
Oh, sorry.
Just abortion funds are going to be more essential than they've ever been going forward. And so if you don't already know about your local abortion fund, if you want help getting connected to them, holler. It's a good place to put dollars as well. I have another question, but Kelly, did you want to?
It looks like Connie was raising her hand, so I was just calling on her.
That's okay, but I'll be quick. I just wanted to explicitly say welcome, Kelly. It's nice to meet you. I think we all feel that way. We just haven't had a chance yet to say that. I am excuse me, this eagle just went by. I'm so excited about the way that GER has grown in these last couple of years. It's been such a delight having Kate on board and doing more and better and reaching out, and really, I feel much more able to be a part of something that's big and exciting and powerful. It's great. So thank you, Judy. And thank you, all of you on the board, and welcome, Kelly.
Thank you so much for that. It's nice to put some faces to names today. And I'm just excited. I really like infrastructure. I really like spreadsheets and nerding out on things like that. And so to be able to, I mean, Kate is an amazing resource of like everything that's happening in the field. And so I'm just like how do we support Kate's work? And Elaine has all of these connections in Maine and beyond. And it's like, how do we support this? And Lucy has just been an invaluable resource too, and Kathy. And so I kind of just see myself as like this background of, you know, they're scaffolding you so I can scaffold them. And I think that's a big part of GER, is just how can we support everything that's happening in the community and each other. Kate, did you say there was another question?
Yeah, I think this question is really about like, how will self-managed abortion work in places where abortion is banned? And so it will be illegal. And for folks who were, you know, a part, or it'll be a legal gray area and then illegal in some other cases. It's kind of a legal gray area already. It entails people ordering pills from the internet, from places apart from a clinic. People have been doing that for many years, and I think we're going to see those numbers go up. So part of what we want to do is like have more programming where we can arm folks with what are the trusted sort of sources of information. And there are now there's legal support. There's a legal defense fund that has been created to support folks who are criminalized for a pregnancy outcome, including self-managing abortion. Unfortunately, we live in a country where your pregnancy outcomes are criminalized, and particularly if you are a Black or brown person, poor, have a history of drug use, et cetera, it is more likely. So we will be doing this community care series that Kelli mentioned, that is really about looking at what is the infrastructure that exists to support people, and also how does self-managed abortion work, and what are the roles of abortion funds, these legal funds, practical support organizations, et cetera, and how can people plug in to be useful in the event of an overturn or erosion of Roe. So stay tuned. If you're not signed up to receive our emails already, I assume you are, but sign up with us so that you can receive the invitations to all these. We have some great programs coming up this spring and summer. We're really excited, and we're partnering with a lot of new folks.
What do you expect? Erosion or overturn? One or the other. It won't be something better than that.
I mean,
Yeah.
probably not. I don't even pretend to know what the Supreme Court's going to come up with, but I'm preparing for the worst and hoping for the not worst. But it is important to know that folks in Texas are already living without Roe, right? They have been since September 1st when SB 8 went into effect. And arguably folks in Mississippi, that is where the case comes from that SCOTUS is looking at. They have one clinic for an entire state. They're arguably living without Roe too, you know? So, I mean, we do have folks in this country who have been living without that.
The question that always occurs to me is, why do people think that the Supreme Court in 1971, appointed by extremist presidents like Eisenhower, why do they think that Supreme Court was out way to the left? How have they managed to portray that a Supreme Court appointed by people like Truman and Eisenhower was this group of leftists who ruled on Roe v. Wade? That how the opposition has managed to give that impression to people is a mystery to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know that that's a mystery that we're going to solve. But I think that's why storytelling is so effective, because you can have these big messages and these talking points and these talking heads that are talking, about babies and, laws and all of these things. But when you hear a story or read a story like Pam Richardson's, or when you hear how someone worked in a clinic and what this meant to people, that's a little bit harder for, I think, on a one-on-one or an individual person to ignore as the significance of that and the life-changing consequences of that. But when we stay at that level of politics being divided, which it is, and I don't see that ending anytime soon, then that it's not a mystery that we're going to solve. It's just what folks are being listening to when they hear that from talking heads. So I think that's why groups like GER and other storytelling around abortion is so important, because it really personalizes and normalizes that as a fact of life for so many families and individuals.
And I think there's stories also that come from abortion providers. I remember
Judy, you keep cutting out.
talk about how she walked. Oh, I'm sorry. That's being living in rural Maine.
Living in rural Maine.
But the city hospitals had 3 different wards for women. One for OB and a third for women who had failed abortions and had infections and were about, some of them died in those days. And times have changed, but hearing that story and listening to her walk into the ward as a young doctor, it just made a big impression on me that she would see that. And we need to get those stories out as well, what it was like for other people and the medical healthcare providers to help these people who had desperately had an unsafe abortion before Roe v. Wade.
Absolutely. We are getting close to 2 o'clock. We're a minute away. I want to thank everyone for coming today and spending time with us and for all of your questions. I'm looking forward to meeting you all in smaller groups as you're in your activism and one-on-one meetings, and just being a part of this community with you all. And being in this room, even though what we're talking about, again, feels dark, being with all of you helps make that fight more.
I look forward to that too. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome, Kelly. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Have a great rest of your days.